So, anyway, so first I just, what I always ask panelists to do is just to kind of introduce themselves and kind of explain what angle you come at this from rather than reciting your resumes, which are, I'm sure are really good, by the way. So do you want to start, Jonah? Jonah, I know you.
Sure, I'll start. My name's Jonah Bloom. I head up digital strategy at Kirschenbaum Bond Senecal, which is, I guess, essentially an ad agency, basically a marketing agency. We do just about everything, including building our own creative technology and PR and so on. I joined KBS essentially to do exactly what you're talking about, Kathy, to make content on behalf of brands, and hopefully to get them into a place where they were thinking about it more. Almost, I'm a journalist by training, and for many years.
Ad age.
Yeah, and kind of basically to get them thinking about it from an editorial point of view, where what they were focused on was more of the consumer and less the brand. And I always talk about, making content. That's essentially the difference between content and commercials, is that you start from the point of view of what is the consumer interested in consuming, rather than what is the brand message that we want to put out there. And that's what I'm working with our clients on doing. The clients are people like Amex and BMW and Vanguard, which is a big mutual fund company. So that's me.
Okay, and Shira is... yeah, well, it's okay. So Shira Lazar gets a very special welcome.
I'm going to make this more entertaining for you.
Yeah, so here she is.
You saw me sitting
I get to be done being the warm-up back now. For those of you who don't know Shira, she's the host and executive producer of What's Trending. I also think she has the most Twitter followers of anybody in this room. Do any of you have more than 41,000 followers? No. Okay.
Actually, thank you. That's so sweet.
Okay, so I was taking them through introducing who they are and how they come at this, and Jonah just finished.
Okay, so let's continue moving on. Segue.
You didn't miss too much. My name's Neil Perry. I'm president of Pop Tent. I'm on the video production side. We do not only commercials, but we do content as well. We do it through crowdsourcing, though. So what we end up doing is providing our clients with 20 or 30 finished videos to choose from. They only pay for the ones they want to take. On average, they take about 3. We share some of the same clients with Amex, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Anheuser-Busch. It's an interesting model. It saves marketers a lot of money. And when there are so many opportunities for video out there right now, especially custom video, it's a very creative way of filling the gaps that an agency can't do all the time.
So let's move on.
My name is Allison Provo, and I'm the CEO of a company called Touchstorm. And we come at the world from an angle of we distribute brands' content to publishers, but in the center of the page. If it's anywhere on the page that you could buy it through media, that's not where you'll find our content. And we do it all under a brand name called Haldini. So we're pushing content to publishers for content's sake, because it's good and because they want it. And that means that we have to work with advertisers in a special way to make sure that they're doing editorial content that's really helpful to the consumer and can be found in search.
Chris, you're doing something very interesting. I know, and some of you have announcements of new stuff you're working on, so I want to also talk about that after.
Cool, yeah. So I'm Chris Schreiber. I'm Vice President for ShareThrough. ShareThrough is a native video advertising platform, so we work with publishers and with brands. And on the publisher side, we work to build and monetize placements that we call native. So essentially, they're choice-based, they're well visually integrated, and they're really they're tailored for brand content. And on the advertiser side, we are a distribution platform for original content. That's really where ShareThrough has its roots, is trying to help brands create, really big audiences and as much sharing as possible for original video. So we've sort of seen a long kind of lineage of how brands have evolved in their content strategy, going from the sort of magical, viral, unicorn, hopeful outcome to just a really sustained content strategy. And we've kind of partnered alongside with them to see what that distribution looks like.
Okay, so now that we have a sense of where you're all coming from, there's a lot of disruption going on in this space, and I guess how, what value really do you bring to brands and advertisers in terms of like creating something that's more customized to them and that will stand out? What do you think it takes to stand out this day and age and bring them the views and the eyeballs that they want?
I'll take a shot
Yeah.
at it. I mean, typically, obviously, video advertising is still an interruption. And that's the problem, obviously, that the brand has to bear because the consumer knows that it's an interruption, especially in the digital space. They really own that space. So for us, it's really about making sure that they have something that could be IAMS helping you train your dog. It could be Prilosec helping you get over your heartburn or whatever those things are. So that's how.
And also, what are your thoughts in terms of content creators, like what they're doing and you wrapping your brands into it versus what we look at it as branded entertainment of a brand saying, like, becoming the studio?
Yeah, so what we call it is branded information. So it's a little bit different than branded entertainment.
Yeah.
But if you're a brand and you want to boo at this next statement, you can go ahead. But we would say if brands are left to their own devices, they just can't help but sell in their videos. Now, that's appropriate for some brands and some opportunities, but there's a really big opportunity to talk to the consumer on a whole different level.
And you do that in many ways, having all these interesting content creators working with you.
Yeah, it is fun to watch the process because the brand will come to us with a creative brief, and it'll be a very traditional brief that we operated in the brand world with for years. And it's amazing to see when you give it out to folks who are not in the profession, they're not on Madison Avenue, how many different and varied executions you're going to get back from these creators. We did a campaign for Netflix, and for one reason, Netflix was incredibly popular. We had like 220 finished videos submitted for the brand to review because the people just got into it.
So you're like doing what Doritos does for the Super Bowl, but you're doing it like every day.
Yeah, we don't do it as a contest.
Well, no, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but we do it every day. We do every month. We have probably 15 to 20 assignments for major brands. We work with agencies. We are about as disruptive as you can get because we really are turning the traditional advertising production model upside down.
But I mean, I would say I totally think you've identified, Alison, like the biggest challenge for brands, which is, there is that tendency to sell. They want to talk about themselves, not think about what's most useful. But I do think that's changing, and it's changing really fast, and it's changed a lot in the last couple of years because these people realize they have a dialogue with the consumers. They've probably invested quite a bit of media in growing their Facebook presence and in engaging people in these all different social platforms, and they realize that they're going to have to feed those people with interesting content. And I think they are changing. And I mean, I think if you look at someone like Amex, they want to add value, and they want to make sure that small businesses are able to grow, because if those small businesses grow, they know that they stand to benefit. But they don't talk about themselves, they talk about the small businesses. And I mean, you could say the same with P&G and mother care and and baby care and so on. I mean, you can see that they are starting to learn to talk about the topics where they believe they can authoritatively communicate great content.
Were you going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna add on to that. I'm sorry.
No, it's just a great
I was gonna add on to that when you talk about brands, though, trying to break free and deliver content. I would say 90% of our customers come to us and say, I'm really looking for a viral ad, something that's just gonna take
God,
off.
I'm so sick of that.
Every single one will come in for it. And then you'll get the creative brief back, and, well, I need our logo on the front and our logo on the back. It can't be too edgy. Make sure there's no nudity or violence and no slapstick comedy, and it's got to be consistent with our family values. Okay, we'll make you a viral
But then,
video.
what about that idea of going viral? I just feel like we have to stop looking at things like that, and brands and agencies need to stop thinking like, oh, it's just going to go viral. Like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't mean it wasn't a successful activation or campaign.
I want to give him some time here, but only about 1 in 500 videos made by a brand ever gets more than, what's the statistic, 500,000 views. So just think about that. It's really like lightning in a bottle to try and do a viral video. There are more dependable ways. He's got one, I've got one, everybody on this panel's got one.
Well, Chris, I want your insight because you're sitting there thinking a lot and nodding, but I know there's something in there that you want to reveal.
All right, I'm going to tell you. Well, there's been a number of panels this week that come back to this specific subject, and people are in deep, deep desire for a new word. That virality is just sort of this this empty word, and a viral video is no longer sort of stands for anything. But I don't think there is sort of an agreed upon benchmark, and that's why it's difficult to have those conversations when someone just says, I want a viral video, without sort of like a deeper sort of analysis of what that means. I think one word actually that got like really overused for a while was community, but you're starting to see some of the promise, I think, of like brands being able to create communities around video. So like Prudential, for example, like that's a brand that you could see them, if Prudential came to you with their first line was, I want a viral video, you'd be like, this is going to go well. Like
Prudential,
not
getting
like
relevant.
and then, Prudential's making some really brilliant, beautiful video content right now with Droga 5, the sort of like the deep stories about people about their first day of retirement, their whole kind of community site about bringing us your financial challenges, and it's all these video kind of point of views on different big financial issues. And so that, in a lot of ways, like that has generated true virality. I don't think that's going to actually top the viral video charts, but this word that I think actually was kind of empty for a while, like you need to create community, overthought when, maybe 5 years ago, is starting to happen because the tools are there to like really build a like self-contained site. You're using video in an intelligent way, and you're actually like offering a participatory element.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is sustainable community, like really being there for your audience 24/7, which in the end becomes stronger and more valuable than here today, gone tomorrow. Right? Yeah, the one-night stand, I'm sure you'll remember it years later, but your relationships go a longer way. and there was my comparison.
I think we're in like a remix culture,
Yeah.
So it shouldn't necessarily be like that your goal is just to have every single person watch your video and share it and not participate. Like for you to really, really succeed on the internet, you have to create something that people can jump into and become a part of it. So, and on both sides, like if there's a meme that's already been created, you don't necessarily need to recreate a new meme. You need to move quickly and be a part of it. So like Lululemon, like shit that yogis say video,
Yeah, that
really
was smart.
funny and quickly done. The shit, whatever say like meme, like was kind of building up steam, and they just moved quickly and came out with like a really good addition to that, just like much larger, crazy, like, internet meme that was happening. And that was, I think, an example of like that's a virality that's already happening. Like you don't have to guess at it, but you can jump into it if you can bring like some actual entertainment to it.
And I think you're seeing a lot more brands spending a lot of money on really smart listening systems that are tapping into and understanding what those memes are. I don't know if you saw Intel, their launch of IQ, which is their publishing platform yesterday. And yes, it's a really smart publishing platform with lots of good content. I'm biased because we were involved with it, but it's also about the fact that they spent an awful lot of money working with a couple of really smart companies to build a very comprehensive listening system behind that enables them to play into what it is people are most interested in at any given time,
Intel's done
and
really
be
well,
genuinely responsive to that.
I really love the
Meme
Creators
jacking.
Project. The Creators Project that they've done with Vice. How much, in terms of working with brands and agencies, like, are you seeing a shift in terms of how much is spent on production versus media, or more spent on bringing value to the creative process?
One of the things I'm seeing on that same subject is they're not spending more money on video, but they are getting a little creative on how they're obtaining video. I've seen a lot of major brands that are going in-house now to do a lot of the videos that they put on their website. They're doing crowdsource programs so they can get perhaps what I would call more relevant type of advertising for internet use. And then they still maintain the big budget commercials, the 350,000+ spots that they let their lead agency do. So I think they're still dealing with the same pool of money. I think they're just forced now to be more creative to fill all these little video holes.
I would say that they still greatly value their media relationships, because they know that, to the point you're making, Chris, they know that virality doesn't really exist, and that they're going to need media partners to get the scale for their content. That said, I would say overall you're definitely seeing a shift to spending media dollars in production. And then I think the other thing that brands are doing, and BMW is a good example, is they're getting smarter about taking, as you say, Neil, those ad dollars and or the ad production budgets, and making that stuff differently. So one of the last commercials we did for BMW, we actually shot 27 different versions of it, right? So they understand it's got 27 different endings, and
Wow.
that probably would have just been one commercial before. So I think they're starting to understand that you're going to need more than that. Take your $1 million and do your big spectacle.
Well, yeah, and I also think they used to just put, oh, we could spend $10,000 on a video online, and that's good enough, and we'll put it out there, and we'll send it to a bunch of influencers to get traction. But there's more, you need to put more into that. I mean, you wouldn't put a TV show out or anything that was on TV and not market it properly. So are you seeing a shift in terms of how they approach that type of content online now?
Yeah, I'll give you our statistics really specifically. We sell distribution. We don't sell at the agency level. We sell at the client level. So that $2 billion industry Ron was talking about, we hope that we're adding to that and going to a different place. And out of every dollar that the brand spends with us, about 2/3 goes to distribution, and about 1/3 in the first year goes to production. And then in the second year, and I think that's the thing, because I would argue that Lululemon is a great example of doing viral right if you're going to do viral, but it's really hard to do. So if you want to have video be really successful, it's going to be evergreen, and it's going to be able to be found in search so that it can last a really long time. And that means in the second and third year, they're just buying distribution. They don't have to go through the production again.
And what are your thoughts on pre-roll versus integrations into, and we don't need to talk specific YouTube because Funny or Die does it on their player, but your thought of where we're headed with that and what brands would rather integrated into the video or a typical pre-roll, post-roll?
I mean, I think it's directly
mid-roll?
correlated to the growth of content production. I think you saw like a very familiar framework of I have television commercial, you have those assets, so it makes sense to put a pre-roll buy online. I'm getting more mileage out of an asset I've already done, and I'm presenting it in a way that feels familiar to me. The downside of that's an interruptive medium, and that's actually like a very difficult interruptive medium because pre-roll, it's like immediately you're hit with the ad, and consumers don't necessarily like have like the affinity already there for the content to stay with it. So I think you saw a huge surge of like the pre-roll, kind of interruptive market because it's very familiar. The assets were created, and then you also saw brands starting to create content because they saw viral outbreaks, but there wasn't necessarily that paid media behind it. They were saying like, all right, I have two strategies. I have my paid media commercial distribution strategy, and then I'm interested in content, so I'm going to dabble in virality. But that didn't necessarily correlate to paid media because that was supposed to be viral. So now you have a lot more content being created with a lot more content distribution budget, I think, rising across the board. And you also see these social platforms, like essentially what we're calling native ads, blowing up, and people realize that like social advertising, native advertising is inextricably linked with content production. The two go hand in hand, right? You don't necessarily like advertise on a medium where people are going to share with something that's just selling at them and that they don't really have any like intention to share. So if you're going to create content, then you are much better positioned across these like social platforms.
I liked your comment about search being a key driver on the video front too. One of the things, Clinique just did a campaign with us, and they ended up purchasing 12 commercials, and they literally had them out everywhere. They surrounded their customer base, so there was a YouTube presence, a Facebook presence, their web, their microsite, then they put it on TV, and then they put it in mobile, and then they emailed it out. But these were all different messages written from the same creative brief. And from a search results standpoint, they had phenomenal return on that because the videos were all easily found.
What about video and social media? How are you approaching that? Facebook, even Twitter, with your clients? Anyone want to take that? Not all at once.
I'll give you an answer. So I would say that the biggest social medium for video would be YouTube. It wouldn't be Facebook, actually. Even though Facebook's running up a lot of views, it's more on personal videos. It's a different kind of thing. On YouTube, what is so discouraging for a brand is just pull them up and look at the view counts. You have a big brand that puts a celebrity behind something, and a year and a half later, it has 3,268 views, something like that. And yet, current content
got the wrong
and young
celebrity.
stuff, right?
But it's true. Sometimes on our show, we'll have someone that's a more known traditional name, and then we'll have a YouTube star. Because they're native to that platform.
Yes, exactly. What we've done is we've created a channel and a huge playbook, that goes in addition to YouTube's playbook, that really drives video for a brand on YouTube. And there's about the posting and praying thing just is not happening for people. And you can't really buy enough views to get, the real virality that you'd like to. Each view is whether it's $20 per thousand.
Remember, LA
or-
Times did something on waiting for paint to dry, and
Yeah.
it was working with a company, and they got a few $100,000, not a few $100,000, a few 100,000 views on this video, literally of paint drying, and people saw there was no engagement though. So and people at a certain point will see that those are perhaps paid views. Do you think about that when you're maybe pushing paid views towards a YouTube video? For
I mean,
a brand, the
I think-
engagement,
We
are
don't-
people
we don't do
worried that are you worried that people will see that and say something?
I think that was an insecurity for a while, and I think that sort of did that probably had something to do with some of the hesitation for paid distribution for content, because there's this sense like, well, it just has to be viral, because otherwise, we haven't really achieved our objectives. So
Yeah.
I don't think we're there anymore. I think that like the sort of the magical like feeling of reality, and that there is no sort of paid relationship to it, like that conversation's been had. And now it's just like, what's the most efficient way to drive sharing from paid media? That's really like the question for a brand at the end of the day, is how much earned media can I gain from this paid distribution plan? Because it's a more effective way, to spend my dollars. Just to talk about the social aspect for a second. So just our kind of point of view is that the native advertising model has really been proven out with these big platforms. So Twitter, it's promoted tweets. I'm promoting something that lives endemic on Twitter. YouTube, it's my promoted video, my YouTube video. Facebook, you're often like promoting your Facebook page. And these things, this is a lot to do with why these have been really effective, because it's very native to the experience. But it doesn't go too far outside those platforms right now. StumbleUpon has paid discovery, and you have a few others. But this model, we think, is really the future of advertising. It is creating advertising units that feel native to the publisher's site. And it doesn't just have to be on a big social platform. It exists there right now because they have the combination of engineering resources, right, and a unique enough environment that they could build an advertising product that like lived within it. But this, I think, is where it's all going for content publishers. For content publishers to no longer just, I'm content on the left side, but I'm boxes on the right side, I'm interruption before my video, and then it's content. It's not going to be so black and white. There is going to be this native, I think, opportunity for content publishers. And that's where we think, the opportunity is for like video to be way more successful across the web. Like, so BuzzFeed's a good example of an advertising experience that is pretty native to BuzzFeed. It's not promoted tweets, but it's promoted content that feels consistent with the rest of the site.
I think the existence of PopTent, TouchStorm, ShareThrough, the reason my
Got 'em
job,
all.
the reason my job exists, like the reason is because people were conscious that it was no longer enough to throw something up and hope, right? I mean, that I'm not saying it doesn't happen anymore, and I was watching AMC's The Pitch this week, and someone was pitching something which looked a lot like we're going to throw something up and hope. But I don't think many brands approach it like that anymore, and I think that they're considerably smarter about having a strategy which is going to engage those people. And that is, again, it's partly about listening, it's partly about, Chris, you made a really good point about the narrative in the content you create has to be inherently engaging and actually allow other people to interact with it and start to build on top of it. So I think the nature of storytelling has started to shift as well. So, and I think people are tying in those, you're not just throwing it into YouTube, you're going to think about an entire ecosystem of how am I going to make sure that this is going to engage my audience.
Yeah, I think the storytelling is the one that resonates with us. We have a lot of our videos, but our brands like to put them on their Facebook pages. And it's a whole different tone and tonality, if you will, on Facebook, because these are your closest friends. These are your brand advocates who have gone out of their way to follow you and to be a part of their Facebook experience. The ads shouldn't be the same one you just had on primetime TV last night.
You need to tell us the story differently on each medium.
Yep. You got to have videos that are appropriate to the medium that they're seen in, and you can't just take that same worn-out 30-second spot that's been on the network for 2 months and expect it's going to have any impact on your closest friends.
Yeah. Do you think the whole YouTube premium new model that they're doing, this experiment, is that going to change advertisers and brands' views of YouTube and how much they spend on the platform?
YouTube continues to come out with new products and figuring things out. I fully expect they're going to continue to take advantage of their position in the marketplace. It's an incredible search engine, and that's how people are using it right now, looking for video content. And if you're a brand, you got to be there.
Yeah. But in terms of bigger money, I guess, because I feel like a lot of people are worried because who knows if their brand's going to be next to cat videos or a guy swearing and talking about booties and all that.
I mean, I think they're like totally headed in the right direction across the board, but they're clearly in a very rapid state of evolution. So on the content side, they've positioned themselves to be much more brand friendly. You know, you have like hundreds of millions of dollars investment across these channels, so that's going to give the environments that you want. But at the same time, on the ad model side, like it's clearly not entirely figured out yet. So you had TrueView come into play, and so no pun intended. That was roughly, I think, like a 30% skip rate when they first broke it out, and now I think you're like over 70% on average, and probably the other 30% of people just don't realize you can press skip. And so this is, it's kind of a point in time for pre-roll on YouTube that the numbers are telling a pretty, like, I think, strong story against pre-roll. Yeah, at the same time they're doing, promoted videos, all the TrueView in search models. So I think they've gotten it right in terms of choice being paramount. I think on the platform, they've gotten it right in terms of well-lit areas for content. But what that integration looks like in terms of like where the brand gets the most impact, I think we still haven't quite seen it yet.
And do you have something else
It's just
to say?
going to give them a lot of good premium inventory, and that's one of the biggest problems they have, or the cost per thousands they can get because of.
But the question
what you
is,
said.
will they get the views that they're getting with their native YouTubers with, traditional celebrities? It becomes that whole story. At what point do you think, TV, ad sales dollars, and online will all be integrated, and your jobs will have to think about that 360? And I know it's starting more, but sometimes it's like, well, that's a different division. We're not thinking about the commercials. We're doing the online story, when they don't realize it comes full circle.
I mean, I think that there are already a lot of companies where that is entirely integrated. In terms of the planning part of it, just because it's bought separately, I think most big brands are trying to think about what is our strategy across all the different media, all the different touch points, all the different modes of communication. I mean, it's clearly a horribly imperfect world, and the TV market is a really strange thing where both buyer and seller have roughly the same incentive. It's a really strange market, I think. But I do think the actual planning that goes behind it is typically integrated today.
Yeah, frequently when agencies work with us, they're coming to us and saying we want creative that's suitable for television as well as for online.
Okay, so your creators, they're shooting also for TV.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's going through either way, and they'll look for a little longer length sometimes on the online. But when you're able to deliver a couple of dozen videos for them in different lengths, they have a lot to choose from. So the opportunity is they could walk out with both, but it's all an integrated message. It's all the same story.
Yeah, we work for P&G, and we run their editorial content solution, which is what they call it, between both text and video. And we all know they published 25% of the new budgets for the new fiscal that begins in just a couple weeks here has to go to digital. So that's a nice thing. And so the leaders are starting to promote that. But I'm as sick of having the conversation as everybody else is. What's going to grow the market? Ultimately, connected TV, and just a blur. I don't know about you guys, but when my daughter says, I want to watch Law and Order, one of the old episodes, I'm even in the industry, and I have to think, okay, we've got that on the iPad, then there's my Fios. If I can't keep it straight.
And how are advertisers going to tap into that need?
They have to tap into that. That's right.
I mean, I think this is for us, Share Through, this is the first year we've seen a true integration and content strategy in terms of television and online. So like we ran about 5 different Super Bowl campaigns. Not a single one of them did we run the actual Super Bowl ad, though. We ran teasers and trailers leading up to the Super Bowl, which is a really interesting concept and was actually hugely successful for pretty much every brand that did it. And then extended cuts of the ads after, which also did really well. But so this is really coordinated strategy that really paid off. They came with the buzz of Super Bowl, before it with something that got people excited. They still liked the Super Bowl ads, and then they gave them the extended cuts after, and really got a ton of mileage out of a singular piece of content. I think, there isn't anything quite like that right now in terms of an event for advertising like Super Bowl, but you're going to see more and more of it. We also did something similar with the Emmys with a brand that 30 seconds after the ad aired on television, we did an extended cut or a different version of it we released online. So, for a company like ShareThrough, we're still only measuring the digital side of it, but we are working hand in hand with like the strategy on the television and digital. And so I think we're pretty close to like just seeing this as an integrated, strategy across the board.
And you're also working on an IMDb of online video, aren't you?
Thank you. Yes.
I did my research.
So yeah, well, on the topic, like feeding the beast, that actually is the situation that both brands and creative agencies find themselves in. Is like, how do we continue to produce content that's original, that's interesting? There's been so much that's been created. First of all, how do I stay up to know that what I actually am doing is
that you
original?
don't post it and they're like, dude, I saw that 5
Done.
years ago.
Over. Yeah, so we created an application that we started rolling out to creative agencies and brands this week. And essentially, it's a huge curated database of great branded videos, and you can kind of sort across all sorts of different filters. It's a very efficient way to come to, all right, I want to see a documentary, maybe an auto vertical, that had that starred a celebrity. And just be able to get 3 different attributes very quickly, see a playlist of videos that kind of subscribe to those qualities, and then vice versa, all the information about the agencies that created them. So for brands that are like, I love these videos, but I'm not necessarily aware of all these sort of under-the-radar production shops that are coming up. So it's a way for them to connect with them.
What's it called?
So it's going to be called the Creative Network. And we just started rolling out to kind of creative agencies and brands. And we're going to actually...
URL?
There will be soon. Yeah.
So how do people...
Right now we're getting the real tire kicked moment right now.
So they get in touch with you if they want a beta.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to send anybody to. So Chris at ShareThrough, and we are going to release it publicly very soon.
Interesting.
We really need it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
And on that point though too about the feeding the beast part, a big kind of part of the value we can bring here, I think, is that sort of database of agencies and production shops, because there's a whole new breed of video creator company that does not want to self-identify as a creative agency. Like they usually say it on their website, we are not a creative agency. We are, hipster word, like video company. And it's but there's a lot of them now, and their specialty is online video. They are digital natives. They grew up with online video, and they've really crafted their technique for it. And I think that is a lot of where the answer is going to come from on the feeding the beast style. It's not necessarily just going to be like big new departments in standard creative agencies. I think it's going to be this plethora of smaller companies that are just all in on interesting video content.
It reminds me of Full Screen is one of them in LA, which you could buy against they basically have YouTubers that you buy against to integrate your brands into. What do you think about, what?
So no, I was going to say, I think actually though, what you always see if you look at the cycles in the industry is when there is crazy demand as there is right now for digital video, you will see a whole new breed and whatever, and slowly over time they get integrated and so on. And I mean, I think we've seen that over and over again with whatever's hot, and it's great.
Yeah.
Like they are the energy and they are the competition that forces the creative agencies to recalibrate and change. But I think the creative agencies, a few of them at least, I'm bound to say us, but I think there are others out there that are similar, are changing the type of people they hire, and they're hiring, those kind of hybrid talents with a lot of, producer, editor type people who are wandering around who just want to create. And obviously you still need the discipline of there being some strategy there and there being some management, but you also need to let those people loose to just continuously
They're
create.
creating networks
I think
of
there's going to be a bit of
views against these things,
I think
yeah.
there's going to be a bit of both. And I mean clearly if you look at Pop 10, that's another approach again, and I think they're all going to succeed, right?
Yeah,
Well, go ahead, sorry.
We have about 50,000 creators in our network, but to this point, one of the largest and most successful groups are small boutique creative shops, 3- and 4-person companies around the country. They're in Des Moines. They're not exactly on Madison Avenue, but they're doing great work. They're producing on a regular basis. We have some that are earning $100,000 a year right through Pop Tent on a consistent basis. But it's that type of young, fresh talent that's coming out and contributing to the industry right now to fill that void, that need for more video.
I think there's a real question as to whether the ad agencies are going to give up this ground or not. Because to give it up, obviously it's dangerous, but to do it There's no craft services at these shoots. It's a whole
They need
different
craft services.
I know. It's a whole different, cost structure and a whole different way of thinking. You got to do it for 20 grand a video, 10 grand a video, 5 grand a video.
But to your one of the points you made before, you have, and these are always on platforms where, you are going to need to continuously feed this beast. At the same time, to your point, it is going to have to be of a certain quality, but otherwise, there's just so much stuff out there, so it's got to have a search strategy behind it. It's got to have an amplification strategy. So
I agree.
There is. I'm not saying you can't be successful operating like that, but I think agencies will eventually be required to be part of that because they're going to need to know it's going to work. And I'm not sure that's always going to be trusted to just a 5,000 no craft services crew.
And I also on the YouTubers end, because I'm in this community, I think they hopefully want more than 5,000 to 20,000 a video.
They get more than that from
I'm going
us.
to open it up to we have 9 minutes. So anyone have any questions? Because this is about a conversation, not just of us here on stage.
You run to Joe, Rob.
So I've been seeing
I'll just stay
tweets
here.
coming, real-time tweets of people thinking things here. So what do you, all right, a question.
Hello.
We have, who wants to go
Joe,
first?
and then you'll.
Hi, Joe Mandisi from MediaPost. So let me ask you guys the contra question. So put on your consumer hats, and Jonah, you could put on your old journalism hat. And let me ask you, are you worried at all that as the lines blur between what is brand content, what is professional content, and what the consumers can discern as being professional journalistic content, blur, that there might at some point be some kind of backlash, kind of analogous to what happened 10 years ago with viral videos kind of crossed the line, and even Congress started to weigh in on that?
I live inside this world. Our mission was to blur the line, and not because we're a dirty whores, but because we genuinely believe that brands, Eric Schmidt, Google quoted as saying, brands sort out the internet cesspool. So if it's the middle of the night, why is my baby crying? And you put it into search, who are you going to believe? Her or Pampers, who wants to tell you about that. So all that research makes them worthy. And so we don't even see it as line crossing. We believe that a brand can be journalistic, and that's why we won't buy media to promote it.
And I would 100% agree with Alison, even with that journalistic hat on. I think, frankly, when you're looking out there, the idea that this journalistic stuff is pure, and you look at what happened to News Corporation last year as a great example. The idea that these people are putting out like this unbiased, objective stuff that has no commercial goal behind it is laughable, and it's laughable to the average consumer at this point. So I don't see why GE can't be an incredibly credible source on new forms of energy. I don't see why Amex can't be better than any other business publication out there in terms of informing people about small business. So I kind of think this idea that these journalistic bastions, there are a couple left, NPR and BBC, because they have a different funding mechanism. But the idea that the rest of them are doing anything other than trying to make money as well is kind of... so I think the line's shot.
Yeah, and when I look at creative too, the companies that we're selling our creative to, they're not going to buy it if it wasn't up to the same standard as the creative they were already getting from their lead agency. It may be different types of creative for different types of uses, but the quality has to be there. American Express is not going to get a commercial from us and put it on the air if it's of less quality than what they're getting produced by their national agency. So they're really the judge and jury on this, and they seem to be comfortable getting video work from both.
I think you need to let your viewers know I know I'm the moderator, but I just have something to say. You have to let your viewers know when something is sponsored, and Google, I think you'll need to say this is sponsored or this was paid for. Secondly, as we saw with Bing, and I think this is the beginning of this, seeing what your friends are sharing around a certain topic. So if you're searching for something, you trust your friends. And so, if it happens that a lot of your friends are sharing something that an Amex had created, I think you'll trust that that's more viable than if it's just a post by Amex at the top. And that will go a long way.
They're not going to benefit if they're not transparent, right?
Yeah. Right. And hopefully, companies become more like that and have those morals and goals at hand. All right, another
Sometimes
question.
they have to learn that, though. Here's a question.
Hi, my name is Tom Cadell at Research Base. I'm a blogger for CEOs. And the question I have is, how do CEOs react? Say, for example, American Express, and you pull out a crowdsource video that is just really off the wall, but it's perfect. You know, you're looking at it and you say, this is perfect for Facebook. It's native. But somebody, a CMO who looks at it, is going to say, that doesn't fit the mold, I need to have my, you know, just starts putting all these parameters around it. Is that starting, how do you handle that? I mean, because there has to be somebody has to give. Either you give to them or they're going to change to you. But somehow it needs a transition.
You know, it really is going to be their call. I mean, we're not forcing anything on them. We're going to show them a range of creative that comes through. Some of it will probably be a little more edgy than they're used to or comfortable with. And that's their call. It's their call on whether they want to break into that type of an environment and have creative that feels like that.
What's the trend? That's what I want to know. What have you seen?
The trend is they're still sticking with traditional approaches. They're not going to get too edgy. We always throw a handful of spots in the mix that are pretty much borderline as far as brand sanctity, and they usually will fall back into the more traditional ones. But I mean, if you have 50 ads to pick from, there's going to be a couple in there that fit your mold. I mean, it just goes to reason.
Like I saw Funny or Die has done great edgy stuff with the shoe company. What's his? I always forget the name. Of course, I'm like it really resonated. But do you know what I'm talking about with the crazy guy? He's like the CEO of the company.
K-Swiss, Kenny Powers.
K-Swiss.
Yeah. The MF CEO.
It's been a long day. Yeah, I mean, like that was super edgy, and I gave them so much credit, and that goes such a long way when you're able to take that leap the right way. Red Bull does great videos, and it's all in studio. They create content, but they do it so well that you don't think of it as like Red Bull's trying to make me drink Red Bull. You're just creating great stuff.
They're a huge media house now. I mean, they probably spend
They've done that brilliantly.
300 million a year on creating content.
Red Bull,
Red Bull has answered the question about how you feed the beast. You know, they actually have stayed ahead of it for years now.
Yeah.
And there was a fascinating interview with their CEO, I think in Fast Company about a month ago.
Yeah.
Just talking about how the lifestyle, this free, like extreme lifestyle is just to be inseparable with the product, and that you should just see one and the same. Literally, like Red Bull gives you wings, you should just feel that. And I think when you are successful in feeding the beast, and I don't think there are too many brand examples, but this is what happens. You create the Red Bull media house. You actually become a true media company, and you start to sell your films on iTunes, and that's what it looks like when you go at the farthest end.
I mean, they've said that
beast feeding.
They're not profitable yet, but they expect to be a profitable media company. And Quicksilver actually predated them in taking a similar approach.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think they're an incredible example, and they predate the beast being there. Really, I mean, they were doing it. No,
right.
But I mean, they were
True.
they were recording this stuff before there was a huge demand for that video on.
Yeah, I think they were great at figuring out the culture around who they were, and then giving them stuff that they were passionate about, and then bringing the culture there. Like I know people that they've hired who are creating everything and strategizing stuff that we're doing stuff on the street or with the urban market and the urban set and streetwear and the music scene. So we're bringing them into the company culture as well. Anyway, another question.
Okay, right here. I'm
There.
making Rob do all the running right now.
Somewhere there.
Hi, Bob Mitchell from Enview. On the client decision-making side and their support services, there are many stakeholders internally. There's advertising, there's corporate communications, there's social media. Question one is, who do you go to, and how do you all ensure that it's all synced up and integrated?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got to the root of the issue. There are a lot of parties involved, and if you're doing something, if you're releasing a piece of content that has real buzz-worthy potential to it, there's much more than paid media involved. And I think that sort of holistic communications strategy is kind of a new thing for a lot of brands. Like to think about, like for Super Bowl example, for the fact that they were releasing trailers for their ads and pitching them to journalists, and that became an article in itself, which then made the video more viral. That was really successful because you had sort of all of your communications, your paid, own, earn, working in tandem. And I think when it's at its best, but it does mean a lot of communication and a lot of understanding between like the nuances of communication with journalists and with organic media versus paid media, because usually people actually think in a fairly siloed way between those different types of media channels. And I think it's that's sort of what the future looks like, is more people that really understand both sides of that type of like media distribution, the nuances of all the paid media and you know, the kind of analytics that go with it, along with like the actual relationship building of PR.
In our case, we just sell at the top, and it's the only way. When you're doing something new that's breaking all the molds, and you're going to have budgets created, essentially, it's getting a little easier now, finally, but somebody near the top has to decide that an editorial distribution strategy is important. And it's easier now because you got to fill up the website, you have to fill up your Facebook, so people are making content. But once a central person decides that they want to have, TV-like reach, but the engagement of the internet, and yet you can have that direct marketing, I would have given a different answer than Ron gave, then that's the goal, and then you can move forward.
You guys
Yeah,
wanna-
we do, we're at the brand level, so we talk to the brand managers. As far as the integration aspect of it, we're really just a video provider, so we let them figure that stuff out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say the best companies are always those, and we all know this from Apple. The best companies are those where this stuff is baked into the entire company's DNA, and then the next best companies are the companies where there's a very powerful CMO who totally understands this entire world, and it doesn't matter that there are departments underneath because they really get it, and that's why I'm sure Alison is, and you are approaching those guys. But yeah, it is also siloed, and it's difficult, and I work with people who run social media, I work with people who run media, I work with people who run brand and other things. So, I mean, it's different in a lot of corporations. It makes our jobs difficult, right? But fun.
I guess I actually didn't totally answer your question too, because it really does change by campaign. Like, we typically are working directly with media agencies, but if you have someone like a mechanism in San Francisco, storytelling for emerging media, it's in their DNA to think about it as paid, own, and earn all working together. We're usually going to work with that type of agency just directly through them. They have all channels covered, versus a lot of other times there's like a corporate PR team, there's the media agency, maybe there's an additional outsource company. Like, it's very different, like campaign by campaign, depending on like how big sort of the the earned potential is for it. I think, though, in the future, you're going to see definitely more of like that integrated just unit where sort of all sides understand like the different media tactics, and they figure out what percentage they're sort of allocating their efforts to.
Yeah, just from a content creator side, because we work with brands. I mean, What's Trending is sponsored. We get our money from ad revenue. And we've worked with brands where literally we work with one agency who said, okay, they did the deal, but then another agency does the social, and they're competing with that agency because they're creating their own content. So we can't even get our content socialized because another agency is competing with the agency creating content. So it becomes so complicated. However, we have, and most recently we're working with Weber Shandwick and with Samsung a lot. And it was incredible because at South by Southwest, they were one of the most mentioned on social media for South by. We worked with them doing What's Trending from the Blogger Lounge, having celebrities and influencers by there, and it was amazing to see how we were working directly with Samsung and the social media team there, but yet Weber was there as well, and it was like very hands-on all around, from the actual brand, the agency, to us. And I felt that was the most effective thing, where we would put up the piece of content and we'd email it to everyone at the agency, to our Samsung social media contacts, and it was out there and distributed through their community and our community at the same time. And it was amazing what we were able to do all at once. So it wasn't like a week later they were tweeting it, or it was a whole, it was, added as a favorite to their YouTube page 2 weeks later. If you really want to be effective and on top of the story right away, you need to, I feel like, have that 360 communication going off the bat before you get into a relationship. So that's where we've seen it work. Anyway, I want to thank our great panelists today. Thank you so much for all your insights. Thanks to all of you for tuning in offline. Is this live streaming? No.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it is.
And online too.
Sorry to tell you afterwards.
And I want to give a shout out to our favorite tweet during our session. Where is that one that was retweeted so much about me taking Red Bull? You.
Yeah.
Very entertaining.
There was some good tweeting during this session. Congratulations, everybody.
Appreciate it. All right,
Yeah.
and that's about it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun. Thank you.